I feel like I'm getting hammered.
Caitlin Clark faced constant rough play and aggressive defenders last season, with opponents trying to use physical tactics to slow her down. However, that era has come to an end. The Indiana Fever have now bolstered their roster with not one, not two, but three enforcers, ensuring that any unfair play will no longer be tolerated.
So the Indiana Fever have got their enforcer. They have got their enforcer for Caitlin Clark. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when it comes to Caitlin Clark and their enforcer, last year everyone was talking about them needing an enforcer.
Enter Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, and Duana Bonner, three veteran stars who bring intensity and aren't afraid to get physical. If Clark's critics thought they could continue targeting her with hard fouls and aggressive tactics, they're in for a rude awakening. The message is clear. If you go after Clark, you'll have to go through them first.
The closest thing they had was Erica Wheeler. That was the closest thing they had for someone to defend Caitlin Clark, was Erica freaking Wheeler. Maybe Tammy, but Caitlin Clark was getting hit a lot. She was getting hit a lot early and they needed their Charles Oakley.
This move isn't just about adding talent, it's about making a statement. The Fever aren't just here to compete, they're here to dominate. With these new additions, they've created a team that can play fast, play tough, and most importantly, protect their star player. Caitlin Clark's critics have officially been put on notice. So, how exactly will these three game changers help transform the Fever into one of the most formidable teams in the WNBA? Let's break it down.
Sometimes you need one of those players on your team. You need one of those enforcers. Every good player, by the way. Every good player, every good team that is a super duper star. Most of the time have enforcer type players.
Imagine this. Caitlin Clark, the most electrifying rookie the WNBA has seen in years, steps onto the court for her debut season. The atmosphere is charged, fans are on the edge of their seats, and everyone expects her to put on a show. But instead of a warm welcome into the league, what does she face? Hard fouls, unnecessary contact, and a level of physicality that bordered on outright targeting. What was going on here?
That's all I see. They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court.
Let's break it down. This wasn't just typical rookie treatment. Caitlin Clark faced aggression that went beyond competition, cheap shots, body checks, and fouls that didn't belong in the game. At times, it felt more like she was in a wrestling ring than on a basketball court. The numbers don't lie. A staggering 17.7% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA last season were committed against her. That's not just tough defense, it's clear targeting.
What little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a soap opera.
And leading the charge? None other than the Chicago Sky. A jaw-dropping 80% of those flagrant fouls against Clark came from one team. That's not just a coincidence, it's a statement. They weren't just trying to defend her, they were trying to send a message. But why? Was it intimidation, frustration, or just an old-school attempt to slow down a rising star? Whatever the reason, it was clear that Clark's presence was rattling some players. One of the worst examples came from Angel Reese herself. Picture this. Clark driving through the lane, eyes fixed on the basket, when suddenly, bam, Reese sends her crashing to the floor. The arena went silent, fans holding their breath, wondering if she would get up. The hit was so severe that even commentators began questioning if it had crossed the line. But Clark, she's built different. She dusted herself off, got back to her feet, and kept playing like nothing happened.
I think we went up really strong a lot of times and we didn't get a lot of calls. And going back and looking at the film, I've seen a lot of calls that weren't made. I guess some people got a special whistle.
That's what sets Clark apart. Her composure under pressure. While others were debating whether the hits went too far, she kept her focus. Even after taking a blatant cheap shot from Kennedy Carter, Clark's response was simple. That's just not a basketball play, but you got to play through it. No complaints, no retaliation, just the kind of mental toughness that makes legends.
And Clark
I mean, that's clearly a foul, which was called. The question is, will they call it unnecessary? Kennedy Carter.
But while Clark proved she could take the hits, the Fever front office knew they couldn't let her face another season unprotected. So, they made moves. Big ones. With the addition of some serious enforcers, Indiana is making sure no one gets away with bullying Clark anymore. Who are these enforcers, and how will they change the entire dynamic of the Indiana Fever? Let's dive in.
The signing of Natasha Howard represents a massive step forward for the Indiana Fever and their quest for a championship. In Howard, the Fever gain a three-time WNBA champion, a Defensive Player of the Year, an All-Star, and a veteran with more than 300 games played.
Natasha Howard isn't just another addition to the Indiana Fever. She's the enforcer the team desperately needed. The moment she stepped into that locker room, the message was clear. Caitlin Clark is no longer an easy target. For those who don't know, Howard is a three-time WNBA champion, a former Defensive Player of the Year, and a player with the toughness to reshape a team's entire identity. She's not here for gimmicks. She's here to ensure the days of Clark being bullied on the court are officially over.
All of that, and we haven't yet touched upon what Howard does best: defend. Howard was named Defensive Player of the Year in 2019 and has finished in the top 10 of the Defensive Player of the Year voting 3 times in her career. Howard has averaged at least 1 block and 1 steal per game in each of her last 7 seasons. And that versatility is really what makes her a weapon on defense.
Last season, Clark faced constant rough play, but now defenders will think twice before trying to bully her. Howard's presence alone shifts the balance of power, instantly commanding respect on the court. Beyond enforcing, she's a game changer. Last season, she averaged 17.6 points, 6.7 rebounds, and nearly 3 assists per game. Plus, her ability to stretch the floor will create more space for Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Alia Boston to operate.
Last season, with a minimum of 25 games played, Natasha Howard was one of just 13 players to average 18 points per game. She was one of 16 players to average 7 rebounds per game. And the list of players to average both 18 and 7 last year, short and elite. Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Brittany Griner, and yes, Natasha Howard.
Howard's defense is where she truly excels. A former Defensive Player of the Year, she's a nightmare in the paint with her length, physicality, and aggressive style. She's also known for protecting her teammates when it matters most. What makes her even more valuable is her playoff experience. With over 50 postseason games under her belt, Howard brings the leadership and composure needed to guide the young Fever into deeper playoff runs. Howard's excitement matches that of Fever fans. In her own words, "I'm excited to return to Indiana and bring my experience and toughness to the team. I want to help Caitlin and the Fever compete at the highest level," and that's exactly what she's going to do. This move isn't just about protecting Clark, it's about elevating her. Howard knows what it takes to be a champion, and now she's here to show Clark and the Fever how to dominate. With Howard in the mix, Indiana isn't just fighting back, they're ready to take over. Clip 13. Sophie Cunningham is heading to Indiana, and the WNBA just got a whole lot more interesting. If Caitlin Clark needed someone to keep the bullies in check while draining threes, she's got her now. The Fever weren't just looking for talent this offseason, they were looking for toughness, and with Cunningham, they found both. Some might be wondering, wasn't Sophie Cunningham supposed to be luring Clark to Phoenix? Turns out, Clark had other plans. Instead of heading west, she made sure Cunningham joined her squad. This wasn't just a random signing, it was strategic. The Fever needed someone who could bring energy, attitude, and relentless toughness, and Cunningham checks all those boxes. Cunningham is the perfect fit for Indiana, and it all starts with her shooting. She's not just tough, she's an elite marksman from beyond the arc. Last season, she shot 37.8% from deep, and with Clark running the offense, that number is only set to rise. Now, imagine defenses trying to stop Clark and Mitchell while Cunningham is wide open for the three. Good luck with that.